Hey guys, this is BFix, and today we're going to be talking about what's the difference between mashups and edits and remixes, original mix. There's all these different names that you see at the end of the tracks, and you're like, what do these all mean? Like, what's the difference between them all, and what's right for me? Because sometimes you'll get a track and it will say original mix, and then it will also say extended mix, dub mix, then a remix by someone or an edit. What do these all mean? And we're going to dive into that right now in this episode, so stick around. Usually when a dance music track is released, it'll have the name of the track, and then in brackets at the end, it'll also have original mix, or radio edit, or mashup, bootleg, something like that. And basically, this is telling us what type of track this is. No, I'm not talking about the genre of the track, because many people have different opinions about what song fits into what genre. No, what this means is that it is telling us what type of version of this track that the producer has made. So that can mean, for instance, they've designed it without, say, vocals in it, or they've designed it so that it's extended for DJs to mix into their sets. So let's dive into what each one means and how it applies to you. The first up is the most common, and that's going to be the original mix. The original mix is basically the original version that the producer has made of this track. It is the commercial version, I guess. It's usually the version that's going to get played first before any of the remixes or edits or anything like that on radio. And it may not include an intro and outro for DJs to mix in. Sometimes it does. Most of the time it does, but sometimes it doesn't. So when you're going to select a track, make sure you select, make sure you're getting the right one and double checking that it has that intro and outro if you're a DJ. If you're not a DJ and you just want to listen to the track, then what you might be looking for instead is the radio edit. Now, what a radio edit is basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's the version that's used on radio and streaming services. So radio edits usually don't have the DJ intro. It usually doesn't have an outro either, and it's a much shorter version of the track, usually between 3 and 4 minutes. Sometimes a little bit shorter, sometimes a little bit longer, but usually 3 or 4 minutes, and that's sort of the timeline in which radios want to have it. Unless you're Queen, of course, back in the 80s where they designed Bohemian Rhapsody and decided to go for a full 7 minutes.
Well, that's the kind of song teenagers can crank up the volume in their car and bang their heads to. Bohemian Rhapsody will never be that song.
On the flip side to this, you have the extended mix. Now, this is the version of the track which is longer on either end for DJs to mix in. This basically is for DJs. So if you see a version of the track and you plan on playing this out and it's for you, not so much for your enjoyment, but more so for your sets, then this is the version you want to get. It makes it easier for you to mix in, and you don't have to be screwing around with, say, a radio edit, which has the vocals starting right on the first beat or something like that. Next up, we have the dub mix, or the instrumental mix. Now, they're kind of one of the same thing. Basically, this is a version of the track which doesn't have the vocals in. This is great if you want to try and sample it if you're a producer, or if you want to try and do a mashup of it and you want to layer a different vocal in the same key, I hope, on the dub version of the track. Usually, back in the earlier days, and I'm talking in the vinyl days, you'd have two sides of the record. You'd have the original version of the record, and then sometimes you'd have, on the B-side, you'll have the dub mix of the record. That's what dub and instrumental means. It's more or less the same thing. Next up, what we have is what's called a remix. Now, a remix is released officially by the label or the artist that's released the original track, and they've basically contacted another producer or another artist and said, hey, do you want to remix my track, and we'll put it out for you. And they will send through all the different parts, what's known as stems, out to this other producer. They'll produce their own version of the original, and then they'll send it back, and the label will either release it or not sometimes, but most of the time they will release it as part of a remix pack. And they do this with several producers. So the original artist will send out all the parts to all these different producers. They'll send in their versions of the track. So sometimes you might get a house DJ, or you'll get a dubstep DJ, or a tech house DJ to come in, and then they will produce a different version of your track, and the label will then release that officially. Some really good examples of where remixes have blown up and actually being bigger than the originals. A good example would be Summertime Sadness, the Cedric Grievous remix. I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner, the Seb remix. Those are really two good examples of where a remix is actually done better than the original track. This next phrase is really confusing for some people, and that is bootleg. What is a bootleg? No, we are not talking about bootlegging in the 1920s where we bootlegged alcohol. No, bootlegging is basically a term for an unofficial remix. So before we talked about what an official remix is, where it's released by the label and by the original artist, this is an unofficial remix. What this means is that a producer is somehow got a hold of the a cappella, whether it be a studio version or a dirty version of the a cappella, and they have decided to do their own version without the permission of the original artist or the label. Technically, this is illegal. Straight out, you're copywriting. You're taking the vocals, or you're taking the sample or the MIDI or the notes, whatever, from the original track, and you're putting it in an unofficial product which is not licensed. Technically, if you want to go black and white, illegal. However, I don't know a producer out there that hasn't done it. Basically, it's a great way to show what you would do if you had the opportunity to remix this track, and a lot of bootlegs have actually ended up being released as an official remix because they were that good. When you start out as a producer, doing your own bootlegs is a great way to build up your skills over time and to have something to release if you're not ready to release original music yet. It's a good way to see what works in terms of song structure and how you structure your remix, even though it might not be official. As it is not an official product of the label or the original artist, it does mean sometimes you will find some pretty awful bootlegs out there. Now, because it's not official, sometimes, just like in the 1920s when you drink bad vodka and get blind, sometimes you'll listen to bootlegs and you will go deaf because they are terrible. But on the flip side, sometimes they are amazing and they really add some really great dynamics to your set because it is something different and it's something that most people would not have heard of before. Plus, when people go, oh, just remix it, just play a remix of it. Usually you have to find a bootleg of it because there's more good bootlegs out there than there are official remixes, if that makes sense. But wait, it gets a little bit more confusing. Bootlegs are also really frustrating because a lot of people mislabel the tracks that they put out. So they might say the B-Fix remix of this track, even though it's not an official remix at all. I'm definitely a culprit of this, simply because most people don't know what bootlegs mean. They'll look at it and go, something bootleg, and they just don't have the education. But when they say remix, it's basically that identification to know, oh yeah, that's a remix of the track. People don't really know what a bootleg is if they're not sort of educated in DJs, slang and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind, that when you see a remix and it says remixed, it might not actually be an official remix. It's probably a bootleg, but there isn't exactly like a bootleg remix police out there that's going, hey, you need to call it this. You need to call it this. No one really gives a shit. If it's a good track, it's a good track. Everyone knows that it's definitely not the original. The step down from doing a full-length bootleg / remix is doing an edit. Now, what I basically determine what an edit is basically a track which is just cut down, or it's only slightly manipulated to better suit the DJ that's playing it, or to make the arrangement a little bit more club friendly. I've done this a few times where I've just got the original track and all I've done is cut a few dead spaces out, maybe move the vocals up, or extended the intro or the outro, or added my own intro and outro to make it easier to mix in. Edits are a great way just to play the original track, but just make it a bit more dance floor friendly if it's not got that arrangement that you're looking for. Sometimes this can also mean having its own drum loop over the top. I know that there's a lot of guys who do Maboothathon. I can never pronounce that right. Maboothathon. I can't pronounce it right. I never can, and I never will pronounce that correctly. But basically what they'll do is they will put that sort of Caribbean drum beat over the top to make it a little bit more jazzier, or make it a little bit more I hate saying it like this, but more Hispanic sounding. And believe it or not, I do get requests that say, play more Spanish music, which doesn't really mean Spanish music. It just means something with a bit more drums in it. And legitimately, I've done that before and people have said, that's Spanish music. And it's like, oh God. We'll move on to the next one. And the next one is transitions. Transitions are so helpful, especially if you're an open format DJ. What I mean by this is if you're playing multiple genres at multiple BPMs across multiple hours, then you're gonna need to be able to transition from, say, 80 BPM to 128, or 128 to 100, or 115 to 140. You're gonna have to have that flexibility to move to different genres in different areas in your set. Otherwise, it's really lame and it sounds really monotone, and it doesn't really sound very interesting to your audience if it's always at the same BPM and it's just at the same key, and it's really, really boring. So make sure that you keep your sets fresh and basically keep using transition tracks to basically move from one BPM to another, or to transition from one genre into another genre. A really good example of this, if you need to transition really quickly, say your dance floor's really dying, it's like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, and your dance floor's dying because there's not many people there, and people are sick of hearing dance music the whole night, and you want to slam in those cheesy rock tracks or those cheesy bangers, then you might need that transition to track to go from 128 or 126 to 140 or 160. You know, you want to play that Sweet Home Alabama, or you want to play Sex on Fire is a good example, or What I Like About You, or you want to you want to get a bit more punk rocky and you want to go to, say, Misery Business by Paramore or something like that. I don't know. Just if you need a transition tracks are going to be very helpful. It makes your transition seamless. It makes your life a lot easier. And it's kind of like a mobile telephone and being able to Google stuff really quickly. It just makes your life so much easier. Trust me, if you're starting out as a DJ, you need to get transition tracks. Probably more than you need to get bootlegs and remixes. Honest to God. And finally, the one that you'll see the most is mashups. Mashups are an extremely useful tool to make your sets unique and entertaining to the people. I use mashups and have been producing mashups for most of my career. And what I do with my mashups is I basically put 2 or 3 tracks together, usually no more than 3, to make my sets more unique and dynamic, but I also use them to play tracks that I normally couldn't get away with if I just played it by itself. So for instance, a good example of that would be Your Melody by Jonas Adden and Mezzo, I think it was by, and I really love the drop on this track. I think it's awesome, but I couldn't play the whole original out with the verse. So what I do is I'll basically go into Ableton and I will find something that's in key, like a commercial track that's in key, make a mashup with that drop instead of the original commercial drop, and Bob's your uncle. Or you can do it to break up your set. And what I do, for instance, I've got 2 tracks that I play very regularly, and that's one with Hot in Here, which goes into one of Tajamo's tracks. So it drops down into a hip-hop beat, plays Hot in Here, it's getting hot in here, so take off all your clothes, and then builds up back into a Tajamo track. And if you don't know who Tajamo is, you can Google him. Basically, it's like a really distorted electro house producer, essentially. And the other one is where I go into Teenage Dirtbag. It drops into Teenage Dirtbag. People love it. I don't think I've ever played it and it hasn't just absolutely gone off on the dance floor. And then it picks up into What's Up Suckers GJR. It's a classic banger in Dr. Evil quotation marks, banger. But it works every time, and it's a good way to, again, make your set more dynamic, make it more interesting, and people not hearing the same sounds for an hour. Like, who wants to listen to Melbourne Bounce for more than 45 minutes? Hell, I don't want to listen to Melbourne Bounce for more than 30 minutes, and I like electro house. So keep your sets dynamic and keep them interesting with mashups. Now, with mashups though, they're even worse than bootlegs. There are so many good mashups out there that have made my sets so much more interesting and better over the years. And they've definitely helped me out and make me a better DJ. However, on the flip side, for every one good mashup I listen to, I probably have another 10 I bin. Literally, it is like a 1 to 10 ratio. Maybe it's because I'm a prick and I'm more cutthroat than I used to be. But yeah, definitely, I would listen to about 10 mashups and I'll go, nah, 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 nah. Oh, that's okay. I might play that one. Nah, nah, nah. Because a lot of them are either out of key, they're coming from producers who don't DJ, or they're DJing in another country where that might work in that club, or that might be their particular sound, but you know that won't work in any club or venue in your city, and you're just like, nah, I'm sorry, bro. Especially when it comes to dubstep and trap remixes, a lot of them are just like, you want to shoot yourself in the face. Like, it is so bad that sometimes I've actually taken snapshots of me going, what the actual fuck? Like, it has been that bad that my ears are piercing, thinking that there's something that's just gone in there and just started to eat my brain out or something like that, because it's just so bad. But on the flip side, you do get some really good ones. A good example would be one that I play quite often is one by Lee Morrison, I think it is, and it's Don't Worry My Child with Aerosmith. Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Like, people just lose their shit to that one because it's a nice vocal. It's a nice, well, not really nice vocal, but a nice sort of sing-along track that everyone knows into a really big EDM track that everyone knows. Even doesn't matter what dance floor you play it on, you know that people are going to know Don't Worry My Child because it's a radio hit. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to get down below and hit that subscribe button if you like this video, and also hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to keep in touch with all the videos that come out, make sure to hit that bell icon next to subscribe so you get notified when we put out another video. Also, you can check out all of my music, mashups, bootlegs, all of that from my social media links, which are in the description down below. So make sure you hit down below, hit those like buttons if you liked it, and we will see you on the next one. Catch you later, guys. Bye.